Hello everyone. Myself Dr. Bhargava from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Nagarjuna College of Engineering and Technology. Today we'll be discussing about a concept called as user input in Python. What do we mean by user input? We already know how to declare a variable or how to define a variable in Python, and we already discussed about it. For example, if you define a variable and assign a value to it, so this is how we define a value, or this is how we define a variable. And the value has been assigned to the variable. Once the value has been assigned to the variable, so the variable will be taking birth in Python programming language. The question is, here the value which I am assigning is a static value. Suppose you need to take a value from the user. How do we do that in Python programming language? To accept a value from the user, we are having a function in Python which is called as input function. We use a function called as input function. It can also be called as method, or it can also be called as function. So this is a built-in function or a built-in method which is used to accept the values from the user. For example, suppose I need to accept age of a person from the user. So I'll be using the function called as input function, and I'll be storing it to the variable called as age. And we already know in Python, no need to define any specific data type for a variable, since depending on a value which has been given by the function, so based on that, it assigns a data type to the variable. Now here, if you specify age is equal to input, automatically whatever the user enters, so in your output screen, it asks for the user, it just you will be getting a blank screen. So if you enter some age, for example, if you enter a value 20, age variable will be storing, age will be assigned with value 20 because this 20 has been entered by the user. So that's how input function is used to accept a value from the keyboard, or I can say it as from the user. And what type of value can be entered through this input function? For example, any value you can give it through the input function. Whichever the value you give to the input function, it is going to treat that value as a string value only. So that means what I wanted to say, even though you are entering the integer value as 20 here, it is going to treat that as string. So one thing which you have to remember here is everything is accepted in the form of string. Input function accepts everything in the form of string. No other data type it is going to accept. So that means what I need to do if I want to convert this string type to the integer type. So that we'll be discussing further. As of now, what you need to understand is, suppose if you need to accept anything from the user, you need to use a function called as input function. The question is, just I wrote here age is equal to input, and I know that since I'm the one who has written this particular program, I need to enter the age, so I was entering the age. But suppose if an X person is executing my program, he doesn't know what to enter. How do I make him understand that he need to enter a particular value only? For that, so we need to make user to understand what value he is supposed to give. For that, we'll be using a string inside this input function. For example, age is equal to, instead of writing only input function, inside this input function, I can state saying that enter your age, or I can say enter age. So this is a string which will be displayed to the end user when an output prompt, or I can say it as an output window is appeared, or I can say it as a console window is appeared. So how this, for example, if I execute this particular statement, how a user gets his output window is, in his output window, it is going to display enter age. And after displaying this, there will be a blink of a cursor where you can enter a value. For example, here if I enter a value as 20, that 20 will be accepted and will be stored to the variable called as age. So that means this string, whatever you mention inside your input function, will be displayed as it is to the end user, so that he'll get to know what type of input that particular input function is trying to expect. And we know that similarly in C programming language, we use something called as scanf to accept the input from the user. And scanf is a bit complicated because we need to specify the format specifiers, everything. That's why we told that Python is much simplified and it is a scripted programming language where writing of the code is very, very simple. So that's how it just accepts your input only to the input function. Apart from that, as I told, it accepts only string types. How do we convert that string type to the other data type? For example, now the age which I have entered is 20 and it is reading it as string type, but it is not actually the string. So, but the value which the string type input function accepts is string type. So we need to typecast that explicitly to the required data type. How do we do that typecasting? We already learned in other programming languages. Let me have a glimpse of it. For example, if you are typing age is equal to, I can say input function, input of, if you specify enter age, and if a user enters age here, so what do we do with that? What do we do with this particular age? This will be of type string. This will be of type string, and that string has to be converted to the integer type. For that, we can do this. Age is equal to explicit typecast of a age variable. This is a age variable which is consisting of a string type that will be explicitly typecasted to the integer type. Or if you want to typecast it to the float type, so you can specify in this way. So float of age. So this is how we can typecast. For example, if it is to the Boolean type, we can specify bool. If it is to the complex type, we can specify the complex. That's how explicit typecasting is mandatory to convert your input, which is of string type, to the another data type. This is about typecasting. Suppose the question is, if a user wants to enter his marks, let us take an example like he has cleared around 6 different subjects and he wants to enter the 6 different subject marks. A user is giving his input in this format, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Or else, let us say, if it is about the marks, let me say his marks is 95, 96, 81, 49, and the other one is 59. So this is his marks in 5 different subjects, and you want to enter this input to the, I can say this should be given as an input to the program. How this input can be read by the Python programming, because previously whatever we discussed was only one value entering. So if we are entering only one value, that can be read and stored to the variable. Suppose if we are entering the multiple values, how that can be read and how that can be stored into the variable, we need to discuss about that. So let us discuss about that particular concept. I'll say this is the marks of 5 different subjects. I'll be using 5 different variables to store them. I'll be writing it as M1, M2, M3, M4 and M5. Okay. Then as I said, we'll be using a function called as input. And if you want to specify that enter the marks of 5 different subjects, you can specify that enter 5 subject or course marks. The question is, he is going to enter the 5 different subject marks, but here whatever the 5 different subject marks has been entered should be split and should be stored into the first value should be stored into the M1, second value should be stored into the marks of subject 2, M2, that is again the third value should be stored to M3, fourth value should be stored to M4 and fifth value should be stored to M5. How do we do that? So for that we will be using a function called as, a split function. And if you are specifying the split function, on what basis you are splitting your input. So split is just a function which can be tiled with your input function. It is just used to split your string. How it is going to, as I said, input is treated as string and we need to split this string. How it has to be splitted? Based on a separator called as comma, we need to split this input. For that, we need to specify, it takes a parameter of on what basis it has to be split. It has to be split on the basis of comma. So I'll be specifying comma as a parameter for this. If you are specifying the comma as a parameter for this, if your input is given in this way, 95, 96, 81, 49, 59, it reads this particular input from the user, okay, and it separates the first input, 95, splitter is comma. When it encounters comma, this first value is separated and will be stored to the variable called as M1. Similarly, the next value to the M2, again it splits based on comma, and next value to the M3 and so on. It is splitting based on the comma here. So that is what we wanted to understand here. So that means a split function is used to split your input when you want to give the multiple values in the same line as an input to the, I can say, the function. Similarly, suppose if a user is entering his values in this way, 95 space, 96 space, 81 space, 49 space and 59. In this way, if he is trying to give, what we need to do? Just it is as simple as that. Previously the splitter was comma, here the splitter will be just a space. You need to specify a space here. If you specify a space here, automatically your input will be taken as, see, I just erased this, it becomes a space here. So that means it is accepting, it is splitting your inputs based on the spaces. 95 space, that means this is treated as first value and stored it into the variable called as M1, and this to the variable called as M2 because I have specified M2 here, and this to the M3, this to the M4, and this to the M5 because it is splitting based on the spaces available here. This is what I wanted to say. And the question is, it is splitting the string, and that string itself, string values will be stored into the M1 and it will be stored to the M2, M3, M4 and M5 variables. It is not the integers which will be stored. What I wanted to convey here is how the multiple values in the same line can be entered into the I can say Python program, and how it can be stored to the different variables. Further, how to convert these multiple variables into the different data types like int, float, or the respective data types like complex. How we can do that, we'll be discussing in the further sessions. Thank you.